This is going to be about the way things get done. This is about process. Previously, I spent some time talking about ratio, proportion. I now want to emphasize process. It takes time to do some things, and often there are steps that must be performed sequentially in the process, or the process will not work. In any process, ratio and timing have eminence. Timing, ratio, so crucial. I'm thinking about process because our society strives to eliminate it. Instant gratification, fast food, processed food, all of the internet connections, Instagram, there is no process to any of this. They take the process out. I like process. I like to see things link up, fall into place, or, as a TV character used to say, I love it when a plan comes together. Celebrate process. In our country, there is little respect for process and no patience for it. Things should happen immediately, but often they don't. The Olympics was a study in process. Training takes years. Competition is a celebration of the process. Celebrate process. Leaving Afghanistan is a process, and we did it poorly in almost every way. Was there even a plan? If so, it was a stinker. I don't think there was a plan at all. It was so much more complicated than simply leaving, and we failed at every aspect. The Taliban rolled in and assumed control without opposition, and that made getting out more difficult than ever. It looked like we were bailing, not leaving. We failed that process. Evacuation? That's what they called it. That's also taking a dump, and that's what we did in front of the whole world. And the PM tries to put lipstick on that pig. That only makes it more painful. Process. We've become inept at anything that involves more than two steps. The resourcefulness of America was based very firmly in the deep understanding of how to get things done. Know-how. That's process. It's physics. Understanding that the mighty oak came from the tiny acorn. And a lot of time and critical interaction helped to shape that giant tree. It didn't just happen, and it didn't happen overnight. Our failure to come to grips with and fully understand and to love process will leave us with an abundance of acorns and no trees, and plenty of clueless putzes. For something to happen, too, the elements must be right. The heating, the motives, opportunity. Here is a sentence from a book I'm reading. Pack a bunch of volatile people off to a bleak location for a month or two, and romance blossoms that wouldn't if the various lovers were in the safety of the suburbs. Falling in love is also a process. The elements have to be right. We are in a huge farming area now, and farming is all about process. Farming is process. It is now conducted on an enormous scale, and the farmers are assisted by giant machinery, but they still have to know what they're doing. They have to be able to adapt to conditions, even as they are unfolding, and their triumph is a good harvest once each year. Every year it is the same, the challenge that is. but I am sure that every year brings a different variation of that same challenge, bringing in the sheaves. Farmers celebrate process. Robert Frost was a terrible farmer, an outright failure at farming, but he was a wonderfully successful poet, and poetry is another, if much less tangible, yet no less real, process. Frost compared it to ice melting on hot iron. Frost had to know each poem before he wrote it, and then find a way to write it. Put the process into words, the motion of the ice gliding on the iron. And I mean write it as if it was writing itself. No one has to push the ice. It moves on its own, thanks to the hot iron. Often Frost wrote about the work of farmers, and in their work he found the rhythm and the words of the poem, the scythe cutting down wheat. Their work, the process, became the poem. Many of his poems are like this. They unfold in the same way as the process he's describing in the poem. He couldn't farm a lick, but he was wise enough to know that the process itself can be translated directly into poetry. Process is poetry. Poetry is process. Celebrate process. Without process, you're just taking a dump.